Hey everybody, it's JulieAnn. You are back in my Brooklyn kitchen. This is Baking with Friends. It is Saturday, and today really is Saturday. And today we are tackling the French chocolate macaron. And these are unlike the American macaroons, which are made with coconut and egg whites. We are making the little sandwich cookies that you usually see in little French shops, or you can actually see them a lot now in a whole bunch of different bakeries. Are like little sandwich cookies in different colors and different flavors, and they are what I consider a Mount Everest of baking, just because one little thing can always go wrong. So I've got my friend Christine with me on today, who has had a hand in making macarons on her own, and she can also tell us about her time in Paris while I've got her. But we're gonna go ahead and add her in, and let's talk about macarons and what we're gonna need. Hey, Christine.
Hi.
All right, I'm just deciphering what in the heck is going on with the macarons. So everything about macaron baking is extremely precise, because you only really have, depending on which version of macarons you're making, about 4 ingredients. That includes egg whites. Hey, Mary, thank you for being on, because we're definitely going to need your expertise when Christine and I go off the rails, because you know this is going to happen while we make meringue. So we've made meringue before on Baking Live, but meringue in macarons is very particular, because you do one thing wrong and it's going to ruin your entire cookie. So I know this is going to sound intimidating. As soon as you get the hang of it, you're going to see, as Christine and I go through it, limited ingredients. It doesn't feel like it's a lot going on, but it's kind of, we have to be super precise in order for these to actually work, because the whole macaron enjoyment is the aesthetic portion. And I will show you briefly what happens when you mess up your macaron. They still taste delicious, but they're not the kind that you're ever going to sell at a store. No one will buy them. They'll taste delicious. No one will buy them. So like I said, you're going to need some egg whites. I have my egg whites at room temperature. I took them out of the fridge this morning, and I have been aging my egg whites. So this is day 4. I usually recommend a minimum of 3 days for egg white aging, just because it helps the meringue, because it dries out the egg whites. So this is going to help us. If you haven't aged your egg whites, that's okay. Just make sure they're at room temp. And I'm going to show you the difference between aged egg whites and regular egg whites right now. So these have been aging in my fridge for, I can say, about 4 days. See how like they're kind of like tingy yellow. This is just a normal egg white that I went ahead and I just took out of the fridge and got it room temp. And I covered it, it's in a glass container. I covered it in plastic wrap, and I poked some holes at the top to let it breathe a little bit. But this is basically, has just been sitting, I did it last night, so it's maybe just a day. And this is my just in case extra, because I was telling Christine, you might have some mishaps in the kitchen. I certainly do a lot, and it's a good thing we're both wearing aprons, because I've been spilling things all week, all over the place. However, with egg whites, they're very precise on how much we need when we build the meringue, that in case you spill some, maybe, you know, something happens, there's like, you know, messes that happen in the kitchen. If you have eggs on hand that are already room temp, if you have to salvage it, it's okay if you don't use aged egg whites. Christine's experience has been using non-aged egg whites. Totally okay. You can build a meringue with regular room temperature egg whites. The only reason why we're doing it aged is because my favorite macarons in the whole wide world are the ones from Ladurée. You can fight me on Pierre Hermé macarons, everybody, because I know someone's going to say Christine, so I got to say something about Hermé. Ladurée is the original. I love Ladurée macarons and Hermé macarons. One of the distinctive features about them is that they age their egg whites, especially Pierre Hermé. He ages his egg whites for at least 7 days. So we're actually not even a whole week in, right? Mine's only 4. I don't know how many days yours have been going, Christine.
Yes, like that. I think it's 2.
Exactly. So, and the reason why is because you don't want to have, and Mary pointed out, we are drying out our egg whites because we don't want to have a lot of moisture in our mixture. And it's going to make it more telling when we actually pipe out the macarons onto the sheet, because they're going to have to dry out a little bit before we bake them. So I'm getting way ahead of myself. We have only just talked about egg whites. This is going to take a while. Hey, Crystal, thanks for joining. So several ingredients that we have. I told Christine we probably should mise en place, measure all this stuff out beforehand. So all we have to do is concentrate on the baking instead of trying to figure out the measurements. If you are measuring as we go along, that's fine. Just make sure you do exact measurements. I have a trusty kitchen scale that I'm using for my measurements today. You can use the standard American, like cups, tablespoons, teaspoons, that's totally fine. I'm going to use the metric system today and be a little bit European because it's from France. And so I'm going in grams, and I'm measuring everything out on this scale just to double check to make sure all my measurements are right. And mostly because I'm going to be OCD like that, but also because, like I said, macarons, a little tiny thing is off and it just throws off all your macarons. And I know, again, it's sounding very intimidating, but I promise you, it's quite simple once we get going. So that is the scale that I've got. We are also going to use almond flour. Do not use the one with the skins on it. That's almond meal. You want almond flour. It's going to be a lightish in color. It's almost yellowy. Looks like this. And you can buy it now in any aisle in the grocery store. If you don't have almond flour on hand, you can always take slivered almonds and grind those in a blender until they become powdery, and that's basically almond flour. But you don't want the skins on the macaron because it'll interrupt. I'm sure it'll still taste delicious. I gotta be honest. It'll probably still taste delicious. It's just that it's gonna be a little bit bumpy and you'll notice the speckles. So almond flour. We are actually gonna be a little bit more anal about that because I'm gonna try to grind mine into a little fine powder. And that's gonna need a food processor, which I'm gonna have to bust out in a second, but you don't have to do that necessarily. Also need confectioner's sugar, also known as powdered sugar. That's gonna go in the mixture as well. And then because we're making chocolate today, we are including cocoa powder and melted chocolate. We are not using the double boiler method. We're using the easy peasy microwavable method. And you are going to be using dark chocolate today. I recommend at least 70%. If you don't have that on hand, anything above 60% is good. Semi-sweet, not the best. And I actually wouldn't use chocolate chips because of the fact that there's extra things in the chocolate chips, so it might not melt as well. But you can use whatever you've got on hand. I like using really nice quality chocolate. You can use a chocolate bar that you've chopped up as long as they're in small pieces because we're going to pop it in the microwave later to make a ganache. So that is that. And you're just going to use regular old granulated sugar. So this is going to help us build our meringue. So we're doing the French meringue method, which is just going to go ahead and build on this egg whites. We're not using any heat. So I'm using plain granulated sugar. The finer, the better. This is your regular average table sugar. If you've got baker sugar on hand, more power to you because it's usually really much finer. And the reason why, again, is because we're trying to make everything small and fine because it's a very refined dessert, guys. So now that I've talked your ear off, let's get going. So I'm going to go ahead and grab, oh, I should mention what you need. You're going to need a piping bag if you don't have one already. A piping bag with about half an inch of a little pipette. I call it pipette, but that's not a pipette. So I usually recommend having a tall glass on hand because I'm going to put my piping bag on it, and that's how we're going to scoop things out. If you don't have that, there's disposable ones like these ones. Those are totally fine. You can use those as well. Just make sure the tip of the piping bag big enough to go ahead. It should just be a round circle. And if you don't have that, you can always use a Ziploc bag. Not as accurate, but you can do it. Close the top and then clip the corner of the Ziploc bag just a smidge to give you the same size hole, and you can use that as well. So those are your options of how we're going to go and build these macarons. Now, before everyone gets started, make sure you've got a cookie sheet sorted. And if you have these Silpats, those are the best, I think, when making these. I've got really handy dandy because I'm taking the easy route. One
yes,
macaron. Yeah, you and I, Christine. This is the route I'm going. If you are not doing this is not necessarily. You can take parchment paper and you can make circles on the parchment paper and then flip over the parchment paper when we put it on the sheet, because obviously you don't want pencil marks onto your macarons, just so you can see the outline. And this is going to help build the size of the macaron. So this is about an inch. You can make them bigger than that, inch and a half. But you need to do this before we get started because everything we're about to do when we start the macarons is very timely. So we're going to go ahead and get that sorted. So if you have a Silpat, more power to you. If you don't have one, don't worry. Just make sure you have a parchment sheet that you have squared away circles. This one has 4 rows of 5. This will do 1 cookie sheet. So I've got several of those. Everyone's sorted. All right, Christine, how are you astute at making macarons?
You know, so I'm really good at making, I make this great spiced, like, what is that, gingerbread spice macaron, but
Oh, yeah.
I'm not used to putting liquids like in my shell mixture, so I'm curious how putting melted chocolate's gonna go.
All right, so this is what we're gonna do first. Let's go ahead and melt our chocolate because it needs to be a little bit cool before we put it into our egg whites, because you don't want to mess with the temperatures of the egg whites. Now, a lot of people might argue with me, and in some respects, because when you do the Italian meringue method of egg white like building, it's actually heated over a double boiler before you pop it into your mixer and then complete the meringue process. So in some ways, we're introducing some hot liquid, but that's before it's hot, before you actually make it into meringue. We're going to be doing the chocolate incorporation after you've built the meringue, and you've worked so hard at your peaks that you don't want to ruin it. So we don't want our chocolate too hot. So let's go ahead and take out the chocolate that we're using in this particular recipe because we're making chocolate macarons. And you are going to be using about 5, oh, that's the ganache, my bad. I was about to give you a bad measurement. You're going to be using about 1 ounce, 33 grams of dark chocolate. I'm using this really nice dark chocolate. It's about 70% from Brooklyn, from a chocolate company called Rocca, which I really like. So I'm putting this in a microwavable safe bowl because we're not doing this over double boiler. We're going 30 seconds at a time in the microwave. Get out your handy dandy spatula. These are the tools we're going to need today. And we're going to go every 30 seconds. That's what we're going to check. So I'm going to go right next to my microwave, which is handily next to me. And I'm going to put it in for 30 seconds. And while that's happening, I'm going to grab my food processor that I completely forgot to get earlier. This is how unprepared.
As I was talking to you, I was making powdered sugar, and now I know how much powdered sugar I have.
How much powdered sugar do we need?
No, I think we need a cup, but I forgot.
Oh my God, this is going to, I can just tell by the way that we both are running around, this is going to be either the best thing or the worst thing. So powdered sugar, you need 1 cup and 1 tablespoon, or 125 grams. So the amount that we're making today is actually enough for about 20 to 24 shells, depending on how big. And about, when you sandwich them together, 10 to 12 macarons. Usually recipes call for double that if you want to make more. But I figured if you want to start slow, if it's just you in the house, or 1 or 2 or 3 of you in the house, you might not necessarily want to eat all those, well, what am I saying? I would eat all those macarons. You can go ahead and eat all those macarons in one sitting. Usually with macarons, they don't lad. They're beautiful and they're delicate, and they're usually good like within the first 3 days, and then after that it's like you're pressing your luck. So you have to eat them fairly quickly. So while that was happening in my microwave, then I'm gonna check after I went ahead and I grabbed my food processor. We'll look at my chocolate. My chocolate has dissolved just a little bit, but it's not completely melted. So I'm gonna stir it with my little spoon or spatula. And just to see how it's melted, there's still little chunks like this. So I'm going to go probably like another 15 seconds. I'm going to give it about 15 to 30 seconds more. And then I'm going to give it another stir. And again, we're just wanting it to be lukewarm-ish. That's probably about as much as you want it to go. We don't want anything more than that, primarily because of the fact that if you heat it too hot, it's going to be heating now. So later, we can go ahead and have it cool when we go to the meringue. So I'm going to take mine out of the microwave. And again, if you don't have a microwave and you don't want to put your chocolate in the microwave, you can use the double boiling method, which is to put a glass bowl or another saucepan on top of another saucepan with boiling water and melt chocolate that way. Mine is pretty melted though now, so I'm showing you. And the reason why we want to use like this kind of quality chocolate is because it will melt. If you use some of the things like chocolate chips and things, sometimes there's extras in it and it won't melt as well. So pure dark chocolate is actually really great because it's usually just the chocolate and like cocoa butter. So we are good. I'm going to set that aside and let that cool down. All right. How are we doing, Christine? We've only melted chocolate. Okay. So next, guys, what we're going to do, and and this is why, again, I'm calling this, thank you for coming on this journey with us, because again, macaron making is I honestly believe it is the Everest. Once you conquer macarons, you feel like you can bake everything. Because you're just like, wow, it's just like the store. Oh my God, I can make these. And then it's not so many ingredients, but it's the idea of like what you need to do to those ingredients that causes the ruckus. So I'm gonna plug in my food processor. So the reason why I'm doing this is because we're gonna take the ground almonds, AKA almond flour, the powdered sugar, and the cocoa powder, and we're gonna just give it a quick blitz in the food processor. And the reason why I'm doing that is because you want the granules to be very, very fine. And non-commercial almond flour, non-commercial sugar, that kind of stuff that, like, you know, we do not have access to, tends to not be that fine because it's meant for home baking. And again, we're going to try to get these as close as possible as to the kinds of macarons that you get when you go into the lovely stores. And we're definitely going to talk about Paris. Not yet, because we have to build our macarons, but when we go through it, we're definitely talking Paris. I did not lie, because Christine spent a few weeks, a month, 2 months in Paris hanging out. So we need to talk about that. Not during pandemic, of course, sad. So let us get our ingredients. So in my food processor, and I'm gonna go ahead and give you a view of the food processor. Here we go, food processor. If we will work today with JulieAnn. Okay, in my food processor, I'm gonna go ahead and grab some almond flour. And again, that's 1 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons, or about 130 grams. And I've already portioned that out in my handy dandy takeout containers. Someone named JulieAnn orders takeout in New York a lot. So that's that. Into it goes. And then to that, I'm going to add my powdered sugar, a cup and a tablespoon, or about 125 grams of powdered sugar, and or confectioner sugar, as one would call it. So I'm going to pop that in. Okay. And then I'm going to take my cocoa powder, and it's about 1.5 tablespoons, or about 7 grams of cocoa powder. And this is just unsweetened cocoa powder, and you can already see how lumpy cocoa powder tends to be. And the reason why we're doing the cocoa powder in the shell mixture here is because this is actually what's going to give it the color. The chocolate will, yes, later on, but this will amp up the color a little bit more. If you were making colored macarons, like let's say we're trying to make like a fruit flavored one, or like a pistachio one, or anything like that, we would use the food coloring later on in the meringue. But because we're making chocolate, we're going chocolate twice, because this recipe is inspired and adapted from the fantastic Lottery. We're staring at JulieAnn's Lottery right now. Lottery. So I'm going to give this a quick blitz. Okay? This is one of those steps that if you don't have a food processor at home, you can toss it in a blender real quick. Or you can completely skip the step. If you feel like your stuff is already fine, which it can be, depending on the kind of confectioner sugar, powdered sugar, and almond flour you have, I would definitely sift it, though, if you're not going to blitz it. And in some case scenarios, I would actually blitz and sift. So I'm just going to pulse this real quick. It would help to actually turn on my food processor. And I'm just giving it a whirl to mix it, and it's mixed together. And actually, the reason why the food processor is a little bit better, there's more volume. If you pop it in a blender, it might actually make it a little chalky. So, and that's it. Like, it literally is just a little bit of a blitz, okay? And then I'm going to take that mixture, and I'm going to sift it, because we're going to be completely OCD about this, into another bowl, because we want it to be extra fine. And as anybody knows that works with cocoa powder tends to be very, shall we say it, lumpy. So you definitely want to make sure the lumps are out of the cocoa powder. So let's grab a bowl.
And I'll be honest, I did not blitz mine, but I did.
It's totally okay. And again, this is just one of those, you can do it if you want to. You don't have to do it. It's not going to be the worst of things if you can't. I'm just doing it as an extra step. I'm taking my bowl, though, now, and I'm taking my sifter. And this I definitely would make sure that you do, just to go ahead and pull out the lumps if you can. I'm going to go ahead and dump my mixture and actually try to be a little bit nice about this and not make a mess in my kitchen. And I'm just going to go ahead and sift it through the sifter a little bit at a time. I always make the mistake of dumping everything in my bowl and then it doesn't sift correctly. So I'm just going to give that a sift. And already I can see the lumps in my flour. And that's a mixture of like the powdered sugar. It's a mixture of the almond flour. And so I'm just going to go ahead and try to sift this a little bit faster. I feel like this is the moment where if you have those sifters, the old school kind with the handles, you would win because mine's going to take forever. Also, hey, Sherry.
Hi, Sherry.
So Christine and I, we are still in the flour portion of the macarons. I am sifting out my flour, which is taking a hot second. And again, the food processing part is optional. I recommend it just because it gives you a finer powder. And then I always get impatient with my sifting and I put too much in my sifter, which causes me to do this, which takes forever when I could have just started a small bit at a time. So you're welcome, everybody. You're welcome. But the reason why we're doing this is because it's causing, and we can stare at my sifter and you can see all the lumps that I'm getting out. That's going to go through it. And we're going to use all these things. We're just going to press it down through. But I mean, depending on how long things have been in your pantry, like confectioner sugar, for example, powdered sugar, every now and then, if you don't use it, they'll just start getting hard, just like anything else. And so it's kind of good to do these kinds of things. So I'm sifting. It's taking me a second and I'm making a mess. How are you doing on your side, Christine?
On my way?
How are you doing over there?
I'm doing okay. I got it. I got my powder mixture ready.
Okay, cool. So that is that. So I'm going to get it all out. But this gives me a good opportunity to talk about, while we're waiting for the sifting, we are going to make a meringue out of our egg whites. The easiest way to do this is to go ahead and use a hand mixer or a stand mixer. You can do that by hand. They always used to do it by hand back in the day. I'm not going to knock it. It's just going to take longer is all I'm saying. So if you have the elbow grease to do it, do it. But if not, you can take the easy route like moi. I'm going to be using my handy dandy stand mixer and having the mixer do all the work. Also with your meringue, the optional portion here is that you can put in some cream of tartar to help stabilize your meringues. You don't need it. It's not necessary. It's not an ingredient that you have to put in your macarons. So if you don't have cream of tartar, do not sweat it. The only reason why I would recommend using it is especially if you are in a humid environment, if you are in a place in your kitchen or in a location where it's a little bit more humid than the rest of the country, then I would recommend it just because it's going to help stabilize your meringue. So if you don't want to use it, don't worry about it. I use it as a crutch because it causes my meringues to hold more often than not. And as we do the macarons and we stare at the meringue and the different stages of meringue, if your meringues are too watery, they're not going to hold. And the cream of tartar, and Mary and even Sherry can correct me too about the magic of cream of tartar. So there you go on the cream of tartar. And Christine patiently waits as I finish sifting, which is taking, first of all, I picked a small bowl, which I should not have done.
It's okay. I was sifting while you were blitzing, so that's how I got my time.
I know. I was like, this is taking. But what is nice about me doing this, though, is as everyone stares at me sifting, is I'm seeing the huge lumps of like powdered sugar and things like that were hanging out. I'm actually tempted to sort of blitz this bit, and again, everything is going to go through the sifter, so it's not like this stuff, but I can see like where things are. I am making such a mess though, because JulieAnn picked the wrong bowl. Such the wrong bowl. But this is what happens, and I was telling Christine, I'm going to go ahead and put it to my face now so you don't have to just stare at me sifting. I was telling Christine, I was running a few minutes behind, and, as we were gathering things, I didn't even think about a bowl. Like, that's how bad it is. My, A game is, off today, so let's hope I can impart some wisdom on macarons. But the great thing is that I know that, Christine, you took a macaron class in France, did you not? Or am I making that up?
No, it was a croissant. It was a pastry class.
Oh, that's still hard. That's still an excellent thing.
I would love to do a class like that with you, because or bake that with you, because I have forgotten some of those techniques, but I will tell you, it was so good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I am all for homemade croissants. I'm a big proponent of that kind of stuff. It takes a whole day to get that dough together. That's the only thing. And then you really, really love the idea that like you can go to a bakery and just buy them because they've done all the work, and they have laminating machines that they just cycle through.
It does make me appreciate that a lot more. Yeah.
So I found all these random lumps of powdered sugar that I'm not happy with. So I'm just going to toss it, to be fair. And I've just dumped out the rest of my sugar, and I'm not going to be mad about it, but there's like lumps of sugar. But as I was saying, some of my powdered sugar I felt was a little bit crunchy, and I'm not going to force it, because the last thing you want is to be piping macarons and then have this lump. So I think I might have lost Christine for just a second, but that's okay. All right. So I'm done sifting. And I'm going to put this to the side. I have got all my almond flour together. And we are ready to do the meringue, the part that we're all dreading. So we're about to do the meringue. So like I said, if you want, you can use cream of tartar. I'm going to bust it out right now just to show you. Cream of tartar, you can use about half a teaspoon. If you don't have it, you can use white vinegar in the same amount. It's not going to add any flavoring. Don't worry if you get scared about it. You don't have to use this, okay? That is going to be my caveat right now. Again, if you are really good at meringue, or you just don't want to add more things into the meringue, which is fine, you do not have to use the cream of tartar. I am saying, if you're like me and get a little bit, I like looking at my frothy, we'll talk about this. I like looking at my eggs and then decide while the eggs are going if I'm going to use my cream of tartar or not. But I have found that I was always really bad at meringue. And then when I use cream of tartar, my meringues are always great. So 9 times out of 10, I'm using cream of tartar. But again, this is an optional choice for everybody. So I wait until it's a little bit frothy, and I'm going to move all this stuff so I can show you guys what's happening with my mixing. So I'm using a stand mixer today, and I think we just talked about how you do not have to use a stand mixer. You're totally okay. It's totally fine to use a hand mixer if you got it, or your whisk. But there's a lot of elbow grease involved, and we're moving at a pretty quick pace with macarons. So I would say if you've got the equipment, use it. Okay. I think I've still got, okay, for a second I thought we were all gone. All right, I'm gonna put aside my flour mixture for just a second. Oh, I'm dropping things over here. All right. So I'm gonna try to give everyone a view of what's happening with my mixing. So I'm using my stand mixer today, and I am gonna go ahead and in the stand mixer, and let me back it up so you can see a little bit better. Okay. So in my stand mixer, I'm going to go ahead and take my egg whites. So I've got 3 egg whites that I've been aging. Again, you don't have to have used aged egg whites. This can just be room temperature egg whites. Make sure it's room temp. Your meringue is not going to happen unless your egg whites are room temp. If they're too cold, we're not going to have a happy meringue, all right, because they need to be dry. So I've got 100 grams of egg whites here, or about give or take 3 egg whites. And I'm going to dump that into the bowl. And when I separated out my egg whites, I made sure that there was no yolk, because that's also another killer for your meringue. If there's anything else in your egg whites, your meringue will not whip. All right, so we're going to go ahead and set this down. I'm going to prepare, again, I'm going to use potentially my cream of tartar, about a half teaspoon. And I'm also going to grab my sugar. So this is plain granulated sugar. I've got 105 grams, or about half a cup, plus like half a tablespoon probably, of granulated sugar. And again, this is plain cane sugar, baking sugar. We're going to go ahead and incorporate this when the egg whites become frothy. So that's why I like having it on hand. And we're going to go ahead and do this in kind of like a 3-part. So we're going to do, once it gets frothy, we're going to add 1/3 of the granulated sugar, and then give it a minute while it dissolves, and then keep going so we get a sticky meringue. I'm going to go ahead and put this in, and I'm going to whip it on low. Ooh. Sounding like my thing, my Double check. Woo! I knew it. I was like, this isn't in all the way. There we go. On low until it's frothy, okay? Okay, and when I say frothy, I mean it has some bubbles in it. And let me see if I can show you a little bit deeper into my bowl. It should have some bubbles in it. That's frothy. That's what I would consider frothy. At that point, if you're using the cream of tartar, I would pop in about half a teaspoon of cream of tartar. And again, you don't have to if you don't want to, but I'm popping it in. And then, yes, once it gets frothy, you can add in about a third of the granulated sugar. So a third of the whole granulated sugar, if you want. I'm gonna let mine go a little bit. Okay, now there's definitely more bubbles, and I'm gonna go ahead and add in a third of that. Not a third cup, just a third of the contents of the sugar, okay? And we're gonna go until the sugar dissolves, and then keep mixing. And then we're gonna keep doing that, okay? Every few minutes as you build your meringue, while the sugar dissolves and you can see the sugar dissolving, add in another third until we run out. We're gonna do that 3 times. It's a total of half a cup and half a table. I think it's half a cup and a half a tablespoon. Yeah, it's half a cup or half a tablespoon or 105 grams. Thank you for asking. All right, so mine is looking pretty frothy. I'm gonna keep going. I started with low speed and then I increase the speed. And you're probably not going to hear Christine and I over the sounds of our mixers. I don't have a mic pack on me. So I'm going to practically be screaming at you through the screen as my egg whites go. And I'm going to try to give you a little bit of a look of what's happening with my egg whites. Let me see if I can bring you guys with me. I'm going to add my second bit of sugar. And now I'm going to add the last bit of sugar. And this one's pretty high. All right, I'm going to stop this real quick and let's talk about the meringue. So we've like Mary and I have built meringue before when we made cake, when we made our chiffon cake. So the kind of thing we're doing right now, so we're building a French meringue. We're adding sugar into the eggs and it's going to start getting really sticky and very creamy and very white. What you are waiting for is you're waiting for the meringue to stick in the air and there's not going to be any falling of batter. So I'm going to show you what's happening. See how, if I put down and I lift up my beater, do you see how this is falling? That means it hasn't set. I need to whip up my egg whites more. We are waiting for it to get to the point where if I took this bowl and I stuck it over my head, the meringue will not fall. All right? So keep beating your egg whites. Basically, keep beating your egg whites. And I'm gonna put mine on high right now. I'm gonna check my beaters again, and I'm gonna lift up. Now you can tell it's starting to get a little stiff. It's kind of marshmallowy looking, right? It is still not to the stage I want it. It's still dripping down the beater. So I'm going to go a little bit more. It doesn't have that much longer to go though. All right, let's check this again. Okay, I'm going to show you what's happening with my egg whites. All right, if I drop it, see how it's staying and it's sticking and it's not moving? This is what you want. You don't want it to be falling. Now I'm going to look at the bowl itself. All right, if I take this bowl, yeah. It should be like, it's not going to get in the stiff peaks like because there's sugar in it. It's going to be more marshmallowy, and there's going to be small peaks, but it's not going to be super stiff peaks. What you're looking for is you're looking for what's happening with the beater. So if I put the beater in and I dunk it and I take it out, is the batter falling? See how this is falling just a little, but it's taking a really long time. This actually might need a little bit more time, but it's holding on, right? You want it to not have to fall. So if I took my mixture and I turned it upside down, nothing's coming out, which means that's pretty good. I'm actually pretty happy with this, to be fair. All right, it's pretty marshmallowy looking. That's what we're going for, okay? And again, everyone's is gonna take just a little bit of time. Sometimes it'll take a little bit longer, but it should look like, honestly, it should look like melted marshmallow. That's basically what it looks like, because it is egg whites that you've mixed with sugar, and that has built us our meringue. So if it doesn't feel like it's stiff enough, so like for example, if I was putting this in here and I was like, okay, maybe another 2 or 3 beats. Again, when you take it out, if I lift it out, okay, this should not be dropping. This should be holding. If it's still dropping, it needs to go a little bit longer, not that much more, but I wouldn't go past this. And actually this is okay. I think this is okay. See how, again, gravity, this is gonna drop eventually because I just plopped because I shook it, but it should hold. Like again, I should be able to take this entire thing. All right, we're gonna play the game. I should be able to take the entire thing, and if I'm confident about it, my bowl, I should be able to put it over my head and not have it drop, all right? That's how stiff your meringue has to be. I'm not putting it over my head because I'm scared, so I just put it over the counter just in case. But that's pretty good. I'm all right with this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in the rest of my meringue. And again, this is not like meringue with cake where you're seeing the huge valleys and peaks and things, because we added sugar into the meringue. So remember that. Okay, because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm waiting for it to have like many, many peaks. Not necessarily. So lava, I'm adding the chocolate now, yes. And Sherry is right. You want it to look like lava consistency. And you should literally be able to do like what they call a figure 8, where if you did a figure 8 with your beater and it dropped, or your spatula, and it eventually melts back, it's good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Lava consistency. So this is my egg whites right now. I'm going to take my chocolate that I melted. I'm going to touch it, make sure it's not too hot. It feels cool to the touch. And I'm going to fold it in very slowly and deliberately. So I'm going to use a bigger spatula, actually. And drop. It's not a little, it's not that much chocolate. It's just a dab. I'm going to drop it into my egg whites. Oh my God, I love the smell of melted chocolate. Smells so yummy, and you can just watch it drip. And we're gonna fold that delicately into our batter. And when I say fold, I don't mean to stir it. When you make this kind of a motion, we're gonna go underneath and over like a little paddle. Okay, so all right, every bit of chocolate you can. All right, so I'm gonna get my bowl and I'm gonna show you. I'm just gonna go ahead and go underneath, and I'm gonna fold this in. Okay, just as delicately as possible. Now, it doesn't have to be, I want to get it as incorporated as possible, but if it doesn't completely incorporate it, don't be upset because we're about to toss in the flour. So I'm going to get it to, it's pretty good. It's kind of stripy looking. That's good. Okay. It's a rough incorporation, okay? We don't have to be so like going into it to make sure it's totally brown. Like that's not going to happen because that color is not going to come in until we put in our ground flour or ground almond flour mixture. So here's my almond flour mixture, all right? I'm going to drop, I like doing about half of it at first, just to double check so I don't overwhelm. And I'm going to go ahead and do what some consider like almost like a rough fold, just to loosen up the meringue, okay? And then I'm going to dump in the rest of it. So, and then I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to go ahead and fold it in because, again, you want to fold it gently. And the reason why we're folding it gently is there is no baking powder. There's no baking soda. The only aeration into these cookies is the egg whites. So if you beat the egg whites and the air out of the whites that you worked so hard to achieve when you were building those stiff peaks, they're not going to rise. And I will show you what happens to macarons that you beat the air out of. So I'm just folding, and it's gonna feel kind of sticky, and it's gonna feel a little bit. And I was telling Christine, as you stir this, so you know, don't feel so. You want to be delicate with it, but you don't actually have to feel so necessarily precious either. You can give it the first like 50 or so turns, like kind of give it it almost feels a little rougher than I should be. But enough that it incorporates, and sometimes I cut in through the middle like this, and I drop in to get the stuff at the bottom. Because you can see my bottom. Look at all the white at the bottom that I didn't get because I'm so focused at the top, and that's where you need it. Because the worst thing that'll happen is when you're piping these out, you'll get that little strip of white that you didn't intend, which would be great if these were colored, but they're supposed to be chocolate, so. Okay, and you just want to incorporate it until you don't see any more egg white. So you don't keep, yeah. Yes, you would. So for example, I'm looking at my brown and I'm like, that's not brown enough for me. I really want these to scream chocolate. So I'm gonna toss in some like brown or black food coloring. I don't know why black, maybe brown. Brown would probably be better. Food coloring in. This is the time to do it. And this is when we're making, if there wasn't cocoa powder and chocolate in it, you could be making regular macaron shells. This is the point where you would add food coloring as well. Red, yellow, green, blue, whatever you'd like, depending on what flavor you're making. But since this is chocolate, I'm going to be happy with what I got. So now, here comes the fun part. I've preheated my oven. I'm preheating my oven now. It's 300. I turned it on because my oven is very finicky lately. I want to get it to make sure it's 300 degrees. And so I turned mine on. However, we're going to have to sit for a second and wait for the macarons to dry out. So you don't have to turn it on. I turned mine on already though. So if you're one of those people that can't help yourself, you can do it. And if not, if your oven is usually a great gold standard, don't worry about it. We're going to have enough time to heat it. So like I said, I have a piping bag here. I have about half an inch of a tip, half an inch tip that I'm going to go ahead and, mine is fairly large, that I'm going to go ahead and put in a piping bag. I like taking like a large jar, for example, or a really tall glass, and I like sticking my bag directly into it and folding it over so it holds. Now, Christine has a really fantastic little tube, which is much easier, but if you're like JulieAnn, I'm folding my bag over the glass because now there's this hole like Christine has right there where you can put the filling in. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and grab my filling and I'm just going to dump it as best as I can into this piping bag. Now, if you don't have a glass, you can go ahead and do this method where you go ahead and you put your hand like that underneath it and then you stick it out and then cause the hole. But again, if you can get a larger hole because of how much batter you've got. Actually, I'm thinking I need a smaller spatula to put this in. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just start dropping that into my bag and then giving it a little bit of a shake as we go down the bag. And this is how we are going to get these macarons into the sheet. So, and it should be kind of granular. Ooh, I got some chocolate in there because I switched spatulas. Then you can shove down the batter as well. My rather large spatula is not going to make it into this bag, so JulieAnn has switched spatulas. And Mary just pointed out, if you're adding food coloring, you only want to do like 2 or 3 drops of food coloring. You don't want to add too much because it'll leave moisture. And actually, a lot of food coloring goes a long way. You might not think it, and depending on what kind of food coloring you have as well, if you're using like gel food coloring or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and shake my bag because I feel like, yeah, there we go. Shake, shake, shake. At this point, I like just holding it out like this, and then the hole is larger, so it's easier to incorporate. And now I can actually go like this. Make it easier on my life, but at the same time, hold it, because sometimes gravity. And again, these are the moments where you don't know how your macarons are going to turn out until after we pipe them. So at this point, everything feels right. It looks good. I'm happy with it. I'm not angry at it. I feel like it hasn't let me down, but we will talk about it. And then after, once we pipe these, we'll talk about the filling and what we're going to do for the filling. Because you thought this was it? This isn't it. Please. We've got more to go. This is quite exciting, though. And I remember the reason why we're even making macarons is because over the winter holiday, Christine was talking about her gingerbread ones. And I was thinking to myself, how fun would those be to make? Yeah, so we talked a little bit about Pierre Hermé, who is a pastry chef in France, who a lot of people consider to be the man who makes the best macarons, depending on who you talk to. And he uses, for his macarons, if you stare at his baking books, he uses what is called the Italian meringue method, which is to cook your egg whites a little bit in sugar, and then you finish the mixing process. So in a stand or an electric hand mixer. So if you guys remember a few weeks ago, I feel like it's a few weeks ago, but I feel like time is relative now when we're sitting in pandemic style homes. I was making tiramisu with my friend Alicia, and we use the Italian meringue method for the egg whites because I don't trust American eggs. Because I'm like, salmonella style. I don't, because usually if everyone recalls about tiramisu, when you make it, you use egg whites straight out of your refrigerator, and usually eggs from Europe sit like, not in the refrigerator because they don't have those kinds of issues, I guess. We're a little bit more precious here. We like to stick our eggs in the fridge and don't want to get salmonella. So I cooked my meringue, and that was an Italian meringue method. So I've got my piping bag full of my batter. I'm going to go ahead and grab. This is a moment where this jar is helpful, so it can hold my piping bag while I grab. I'm going to grab a cookie sheet, and I'm going to grab, I just have a plain cookie sheet, and I said before, and we're going to see JulieAnn's station is very messy. It's a good thing we have time to clean. I'm going to go ahead and show you how we're piping it. So Christine and I have our cheating silpats, which will make life easier. And I am just going to go ahead and pipe. So mine's already coming out, like mine's dripping. That means gravity is working. So basically, the method here, I start in the center. Let's go ahead and show you. Let me see if I can get you closer. Closer. All right. So I like starting in the center. I'm starting at the top of my piping bag. I'm going to squeeze and let it go until it goes all the way to the edges of that circle, and then I'm going to swirl and lift. Now, don't worry if there's a little bit of a hat. I call them hats at the top. We're going to fix this when we tap our macaroon sheets on the counter, and that'll get fixed. And if it still doesn't get fixed, we can go ahead and take a little bit of water and push it down. So don't worry about that. So again, I'm going to squeeze from the center. I'm going to let it go until it's about to my mold, and I'm going to turn it and lift and squeeze. And then we're just going to repeat. Turn. And then squeeze. And again, some are going to be better than others, I feel, depending on how fast I lifted my piping bag. And you're using your rounds that you went ahead and you either created or have on the sheet as your guide. I can totally see where I'm off center. And again, I do like a little swirl method, but Christine might have a better method herself. I'm trying to get these flat. And again, if they have little hats, I like calling them hats, we can pop out a little bit of the air. Ooh, that one was a bad one. Don't look at that one. That one is terrible. That's what happens when JulieAnn talks and she pipes at the same time. Apparently she can't do both. And again, these are going to spread out a little bit more evenly. Some of them you feel like, oh no, it looks like they're bigger than the other ones on the sheet. Don't worry. We're going to go ahead and remedy that by the tapping, because we're going to end up tapping these to spread these out and also to not necessarily take out the air, but to cause them to spread a little bit. And some people get really good at these. They start piping super fast. JulieAnn is not that person. I get really scared. I once took a macaroon class actually with Sherry, who's here, and a couple of my other friends, and we all had took turns with the piping bag, and all of us were just like trying to figure out who the best piper was. I definitely was not the best piper. So, okay. So I've got enough for probably another sheet. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab my other sheet. But what I'm going to do with this particular one, just so I can show you what's happening. I told you, don't be afraid if there's like little hats. I'm going to take my bag, my pan, and I'm going to tap it. I'm going to give it like 4 or 5 wraps, about just to lightly tap. I was banging just to show you guys, but I was a lightly tap to get them to spread out a little bit. And again, if you're seeing like little hats, I go ahead and take a little bit of water, just a dab. All right, I'm going to dab my finger in water just a little bit so it's wet but not dripping. Okay, and I'm going to touch the tops, light tops, and push down where I see the little hats, which actually is not all of them, just some of them. And then again, if I need more water on my finger, I think those are okay. All right, and now we're going to do the hard part. We are going to let these sit out for about 15 minutes so that they can dry out. I'm going to put them over by my stove, and we're going to let them sit out for about 15 minutes or so. And I think I lost Christine, but she'll be back. So here they are. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to take these macarons and just the batter. They're sitting on my silpat on my baking tray, and I'm going to sit them out on my countertop, and we're going to give them about 15-ish minutes. Okay. Ooh. And let me grab Christine again. And everyone that just came aboard, we're still in our macaron piping. All right, and I'm gonna grab my other sheet.
All right, and JulieAnn, what's the temperature for the oven again?
The oven is 300 degrees.
Okay.
All right, I probably don't have that much batter left, maybe enough for a handful. But I'm gonna go ahead and show everyone again my baking sheet. This is a different one. On the other side of this one, I actually like this one a lot, is rounds for when you're making pie. So it gives you the sizes, so that is always exciting. So this is the double up. Also a silpat, it has the marks of the circle. Again, I'm pushing till it almost reaches the center, and then I lift did I do like a little swirl to get it out? And that one has a little, what I call a little hat, which I feel like is avoidable. That one's better. And again, we're gonna push this. I think I might be able to get, and it's important to dry out the batter before it goes in, because that's what's gonna give us our little feet. They call the feet of our macaron. All right, I might have maybe one more in me. How are you doing, Christine?
I'm doing good. I have do you have a lot? I'm making like, I'm going to be on my third silpat worth.
Really? I'm only, no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. I have 29. I'm going to do an odd because I've got a little bit more. I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to call my tester. I'm going to stick it in there.
I have 48 shells already.
Oh my God, Christine.
And I still have, look, I still have this much left.
Oh, wow. I wonder if you're using a smaller tip, a smaller sized macaron silpat.
Either that.
How many rows do you have?
Perfectly wrong with mine.
I know it could, well, fuck. This is what I was talking about, though, about the finicky nature of macarons. It's like you do not know how your macaron is going to turn out until you get to the end. So I am done. I don't have any more. I'm going to have an extra. And again, I'm going to tap on the counter just to get them to spread out. And then if I see any little weird hats, actually, I'm going to see if I can fix that. My finger. You can go ahead and push it down a little bit if your finger is all sticky. I wet my finger. I make sure it's not dripping though, just like that it's wet, lightly wet. And I just push down the bit.
Oh, you know what it is, JulieAnn? I think I used an extra egg white.
Oh, did you? That's okay.
Yeah, right?
Second train, let's actually talk about what she just mentioned. So if you've gotten to this stage, now this is where I was talking to you about how finicky macarons are. If you were finding that your meringue, when you mixed everything in, the batter was really stiff and you didn't feel like it was going to be kind of pipeable, you could add another egg white. Just mix egg white by hand until it's frothy, and then pour that into the bowl, and then go ahead and incorporate it in to loosen the batter. About half an egg white. You don't want to use necessarily like a whole, half to whole egg white. You can. So to go ahead and loosen up your batter a little bit, and then that's what you're going to use for your piping. Now, Christine just mentioned she thinks that she added an extra egg white. Now, this is where I'm going to tell you that it might actually be okay, because when you do American measurements, like 3 egg whites, 4 egg whites, and you don't go off the measurements like 100 grams, 150 grams, it took me 4 egg whites to get 100 grams, okay? And I was going off of the metric measurement. So anywhere, because my eggs might have been smaller than everybody else's, right? Are you using large eggs? Are you using medium eggs? Are you using small eggs? So these are the kinds of things that you have to think about that we should have also probably addressed earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and take out my last of it. I was actually thinking to myself that these are not as dark as I would normally want them to be. I felt like I probably should have added more chocolate, to be fair. I was thinking that these were sort of light. But while this is happening, again, 15 minutes or so, we're going to let them dry out. And what we're looking for is the macaron batter to be dry enough that if you stick your finger onto the top of the shell, it will be dry to the touch, because right now it's very sticky. Now let's talk about a filling. So leave this aside to dry. Okay, my kitchen's a mess. Don't know about yours. So I think also, Christine, you might be using macaron shell sizes that are smaller than mine.
Maybe. I do make them a little smaller.
Yeah, because I think my cell pat only had enough, like I said, 4 rows of 4, pretty large. So I think that depending on how you're doing it, and I put a lot in, so that could also be the thing too, because Christine actually, depending on the pressure that you're using in the filling in the bag, might also be a thing. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do next. We're going to go ahead and while this is happening, let's talk about the filling. So with chocolate macarons, the traditional filling for chocolate macaron is a chocolate ganache, which is basically melted chocolate, a little bit of butter, and some heavy cream. We can also do what is called today a white chocolate raspberry ganache, which is the same idea. You use white chocolate, some heavy cream, and a spoon or two of raspberry jam to give it that raspberry flavor. So let me grab some things, and then we'll talk about filling. So again, the most important thing about making macarons is the meringue. That's giving it the air, that's giving it the rise. Lots of things can happen with your macaron making. Yesterday, JulieAnn was making strawberry ones, and I was telling Christine, I forgot an egg white because I was not paying attention when I was dropping it in. And I thought to myself, my batter is really sticky, but I'll go with it. And the macarons, again, delicious. They spread and they didn't rise up because what ended up happening is it didn't have enough egg whites. So Christine's actually might get a little taller because she used, I honestly don't think, Christine, that's going to be a problem. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think it's going to be a problem. Well, I might eat my words later when we take them out of the oven, but I don't think it's going to be a problem. So what we're going to do for the filling, let's go ahead and talk about the filling. If you're making a chocolate ganache, you can make both. I'm actually going to show you both for this particular piece. I'm going to go ahead and do a chocolate and a white chocolate raspberry. Now, the chocolate one, we're going to do the same thing that we were doing earlier with the chocolate, and we're going to go ahead and melt the chocolate in the microwave. And then we're going to melt that along with some heavy cream and some butter. So you can do the double boiler method, which is over the stovetop. Some people like heating the cream first and then pouring it on top of the chocolate, which actually you can do, or you can go ahead and do, I like putting chocolate in the microwave, melting it down with a little bit of butter, and then putting the cream in and then doing the whole thing in the microwave. And then you just have to mix. So it just depends. You like using heavy cream. If you don't have heavy cream on hand, you can use half and half. Easy fix. If you don't want to use dairy, Mary can go ahead and probably pipe in as well, because apparently she's also the best piper. That's what she wrote down here. She can pipe in and let you know if on her scale of like veganism, if when she's made ganaches before, if like almonds, soy milks, and coconut milks and things have worked. As long as it's a hot liquid, you should be fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab. So for my filling today, if I'm making all chocolate, it's going to be 5 ounces of chocolate that's been chopped. And then again, I'm using this really nice like Rocca dark chocolate from here in Brooklyn. That's a shout out to them. That's about 145 grams if we're going to go metric. And I'm just going to go ahead and take that. I'm taking a tablespoon of butter. And you can chop this up into pieces as well. Actually, it should be 2 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to grab my knife. And
are you going to make the dark and the white chocolate, or is this the same recipe for either?
You can do one or the other. You can do both. I'm going to do both. So I'm going to make half of each. I'm going to make half of each just to show everybody. And if you want to be, a lot of people like doing buttercream filling. American macarons like using buttercream filling, which is fine, which is your basic frosting that you make for cakes. I don't like it. I think it's too sweet sometimes, but you can do lots of fun flavorings with it. I know you can go ahead and, Christine's not a fan of the cream cheese, but you can make a really great cream cheese filling for your macarons by using a buttercream cream cheese mix. And that's delicious as well. You can take the easy way out and you can just do a jam filling, which is a lot of what macarons that are fruit filled are. It's usually just jam, a little bit of thicker than normal jam. So I've got actually some jam here that I'm going to show you guys. I'm using, it's a cherry raspberry jam, but the reason why it's cherry is because they put dots of cherries into a raspberry jam. So technically it's raspberry with cherry. So I am using this cherry raspberry jam, but I'm going to do 2 different ganaches while Christine is finishing. I am really worried. Either mine are going to be gargantuan, Christine, and yours are going to be like the perfect size. And I just, because I did not have
I feel like mine are going to be full of holes.
No,
like
I don't think so. I don't think so. And, you know, and I will show you what happens. So Christina had this conversation too about, and what I love right now actually is that Instagram no longer cuts you off after an hour because we're going way over. Macarons take time. So I was like, Christine, you can mess up these macarons. Do not worry if they're not like bakery store beautiful. And that, what I mean is like unblemished, lovely, nice corners. You bite in, it's crunchy, it's cracked. It's going to taste delicious no matter what they look like because it's sugar, it's almond flour, it's eggs. It's going to be great. The only thing is that it's the aesthetic portion. Mary and I were talking about this earlier. Most of the stuff that you apply to macarons are the aesthetics, right? They're these really beautiful little cookies. They're so delicate and, you know, lovely, and that's what it is. But if you mess it up, it's okay. We're home bakers. It's okay. We're going to mess it up if we mess it up. You can have macarons that don't look aesthetically pleasing, but taste just as delicious as the ones that are aesthetically pleasing. Way of the world. So, ganache while Christina's finishing that up. And actually, I'll show you what happened yesterday when I was making strawberry macarons. And just to make the strawberry macarons, just for everyone to note, it's basically the same recipe as the shells that we made, except I omitted the melted chocolate and I omitted the cocoa powder. And what I did is I grounded down some freeze-dried strawberries, and this was going to give it the color, but you can also add food coloring later. And I went ahead and I took a bag, about half a bag of freeze-dried strawberries. I measured that out and I subtracted that amount in grams from the almond flour, and then I substituted that in, and that's it. And that gave me a really nice strawberry flavor. And then just for color's sake, I added some, a couple of drops, about 2 drops of gel food coloring, some really dark pink gel food coloring into my macarons while we were mixing the batter. And that gave me strawberry macarons. And then you can do fillings, like I said, jam, things like that. But when I was making them, I forgot an extra egg white. I just had room temperature egg whites on hand. I was just testing out a recipe and I wasn't planning on doing them, but I thought it would be fun just before, the day before, just to try them. And I was not paying attention and I forgot an egg white, and my meringue was very, very sticky. I thought to myself, this is very strange, but I went with it. And then I came to find that my macarons, instead of rising all nice, and they have feet, but they just went sideways. So I will show you what they look like. They're still super delicious. I'm very proud of them. I'm the only one eating them, so it really doesn't matter. But that's what I'm saying about what happens when you like mess up some macarons. So don't worry about it. So while that is happening, Christine, how are you?
What?
All right, I'm dumping a whole bunch of stuff away from my microwave so I can use my microwave. So
Have you started making the white chocolate one yet?
not yet. I'm still doing the chocolate. I'm showing everyone the chocolate. Ooh. And I forgot to turn on my timer per usual for the macarons. So I'm going to take a look. I think they've been about, I'm going to give it another 10 minutes or so. I think it's been about 5 minutes. So everyone, I'm taking my chocolate. I have a little bit of butter in here, and I'm going to stick it in the microwave for 30 seconds. And then I'm going to grab some heavy cream. And again, if you were making the ganache with just chocolate, it's going to be about half a cup of cream, heavy cream. So I'm going to go ahead and melt that. 12, I can hear it sizzling a little bit. I'm going to give this a little bit of a stir. I'm going to get another spatula, if I can find one. And here's my melted chocolate and my butter that I stuck in the microwave. I'm going to give that a little bit of a mix. I had it in there for about 20 seconds. I'm going to go ahead and add in some cream. I'm going to grab a quarter it should be half a cup of cream if you're using 5 ounces. So I'm going to put in that much cream in. And then I am going to pop it back in the microwave for about 30 seconds. And again, you can do the double boiler method, which is to scald or make hot your cream over a double boiler and then pour that directly into the bowl of chocolate. You can either melt your butter in the cream or just put it into the chocolate and it'll melt when the hot cream goes into the bowl. Or you can do what I'm doing, which is the cheap method, and just doing everything in the microwave. So you have less stuff you know. That's the only reason why I'm doing it. No other reason. All right, so we're making these fillings as we give time. So ganache is a very finicky thing. You have to stir. It looks really disgusting and like a slurry. And you think to yourself, this is not working. This is not working. You have to keep mixing and mixing and mixing and mixing. So it's going to look grainy at first until it becomes nice and smooth. And this is going to be our ganache. And what's going to be good is the reason why we're making these fillings now is because we're going to have to give it a little bit of time to cool the macarons, but also the filling, because our ganache will be too hot and it's going to be melty into our macarons. So I'm giving it a nice mix. It's looking a little glossy. If you think it's too wet, you add a little bit more chocolate. If you think it's too dry, you add a little bit more cream. And I actually think it's okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop mixing. And then that little bit of butter is going to give it a gloss. So if you haven't added it, you can add it in now. All right, so I'm going to stop my mixing. I have enough of a ganache going on. Now we're going to do basically the same thing with the white chocolate. Actually, I feel like I need more chocolate in my ganache. So I'm just going to add in a couple more pieces. Really, I should have waited for my butter for after, but I was impatient. So I'm just going to mix that together. There we go. That's better. See, and this is what I was talking about, where I just wanted to figure, I was feeling like it was a little too much gloss. So I added more chocolate. And then we're just going to let that cool. Okay. And again, if you don't have cream, you can also just use half and half. That's fine. We'll let that go. All right, next is the white chocolate. So I'm going to take my white chocolate chips, about 4 ounces, about 113 grams of white chocolate chips. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to grab the chocolate chips and I'm going to take the cream. And it is about a 1/4 cup of cream as well. I believe that's right, a 1/4 cup for the white chocolate ganache.
So how much? A 1/4 cup of cream?
I'm double checking, hold on. You should be using about a 1/4 cup, yeah. So I'm going to pour that directly into my white chocolate chips and I'm going to put that in the microwave for 30 seconds.
And how many, again, white chocolate chips?
About 4 ounces, about 4 ounces. I just realized I'm going to have another spoon for that. And then it's going to be 30 seconds, and I'm going to mix that with my spoon. Hopefully my chocolate chips have not melted. They're still pretty stiff. Now, I didn't use a baking bar. I used the chocolate. I had white chocolate chips that I was trying to get rid of, which I think might be a mistake. But we will find out. And again, if it's too watery at this point, that's okay. My white chocolate hasn't melted yet, so I'm going to stick it another thing.
And do you pour the cream into the chocolate? Or...
Yeah, so you can do two things, Christine. You can either make the cream hot and then pour it over the white chocolate and then give it a stir, or I am doing it both, but it's a crapshoot, so you sort of have to watch it.
Oh, you're putting both of them in?
Yeah, but actually, now that I'm doing it, I feel like it'd be better if you heated the cream first.
Okay.
Because as I'm mixing it, it doesn't feel like my chocolate's melting, really. It just might be my white chocolate, I've got to be honest, because I felt like my white chocolate was questionable to begin with. Again, I was using white chocolate chips. And I actually might add a little bit more. Because I was trying to be one of those people that are like, what do I have in my pantry? So I was trying to get rid of some white chocolate. But I feel like you might almost need a whole 5 ounces. So I'm just mixing. See, like mine's gloopy looking. I don't know if you can see it. It just feels gloopy. But the thing with ganache is you do have to keep mixing for a while. And actually grab a whisk. I feel like that will help. And again, you can use the double boil method to heat your cream. I'm doing the cheating method, and I think at this point, this cheating might not be helpful. Because I feel like I'm failing at this white chocolate. I feel like I'm using way more chocolate than I need. And again, so I was just saying with ganache, if you feel like it's too wet, I add more chocolate to my ganache. If it's too dry, I add more liquid. Like that's basically how I build my ganache. What I'm worried about is it breaking where the fat comes out of the cream. That's what I worry about, which is why a lot of people like doing it over the stovetop. And Mary just mentioned that coconut milk works for ganache if you are. So now my ganache is finally coming together. Oh my God, I was scared. I had to add another ounce of chocolate chips, I gotta be honest. And I feel like it's because it's the amount of chocolate, the shape. So it should come together and it should start looking a little thick. I'm using my whisk. Christina, we just start with half of your cream.
What's that?
Did you put all your cream in or just doing half?
I did. I put a full 1/4 cup.
Okay. I was about to say, I was like, I would put just half to test it, but it's fine. You might have to add more white chocolate. I just had to add another ounce.
Okay, I'm doing it over the stove though.
That's smart. So Christine was smarter than I. I'm still mixing, but mine is a pretty good consistency. It's gonna get thicker as it dries. I had to add in an extra ounce of chocolate. And then to this, all we're gonna do is you're gonna take about a tablespoon or so, maybe 2, of jam. I'm going to start with 1 tablespoon and then decide. So my timer went off to give me notice about, so like I said, I've got some cherry raspberry jam and I'm actually just going to grab some, try to get it without the cherries because those are whole fruits, which is delicious, but.
Would you say 2 teaspoons or tablespoons?
Tablespoons.
Okay, of jam, and just mix it in with the ganache?
Mix it in with the ganache, yep.
Okay.
And that'll give it, and then you can taste it, and if you want to add more, like I'm just tasting mine, I think I might add a little bit more, just to give it more of a raspberry taste. That's good. Yep. So I took my jam and I just mixed it in to my white chocolate. And there you got it. Now, and if you want to be, like I said, don't even want to make ganaches, you can just take straight up jam, straight up jelly, stick it in the middle of your sandwich. All right, I'm going to look at my macarons and see, and I told you guys that we were drying them out. So while we've been doing this, I've preheated my oven 300 degrees. I'm staring at my macarons. I'm going to touch it with my finger that I just washed and hopefully is now dry. I'm going to press it to the top. Now, my macarons should be completely dry to the touch, and these ones are, thankfully. If they're not, they need a few more minutes. Christine, how are yours?
Mine are a little tacky.
Okay, that you do not want them. You want them to be pretty dry. I'm going to check out my other ones. Now, these ones I did after the other one, so I expect these to be a little bit wet still. Yeah, these are just a little bit. All right, I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes. So some people start at 15. If you need more time, you need more time. You can go ahead and add in like another few minutes. I mean, some people do them like 30 minutes, an hour, like depending on how they're feeling about it. So do not feel like you have to be locked in to the time that I'm telling you. That's what makes these a little bit interesting. You kind of have to go with your gut. And I feel like I broke my chocolate ganache, which I'm really sad about. And when I say break, I mean it means like that the cream broke, so like all I get is like the fat part of it like oozing out. But as it sits, it should thicken, and if it doesn't, then you've broken your ganache like I have. My white chocolate ganache is great. My chocolate one, not so great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a whisk, and I'm going to whisk my chocolate ganache and hope. Oh, there it goes. Better. I was using a spatula. That's probably not helpful. There we go. And then let me show you what we're going to do with these fillings. Let everything cool down. That's for one. So set it aside. It's going to go ahead and cool down while we do all these other things. And I will show you what else we're going to do. I feel like I'm just mixing and mixing and it's going nowhere. I really feel like I broke my chocolate ganache. I'm really sad about that, to be fair. I'm trying to fix it by mixing. I feel like that episode where we were doing this and John was having problems with his ganache. And I'm like mixing and mixing and I'm like, fix it, fix it. It seems all right.
Okay.
Not bad.
How thick is your white chocolate one? Okay, so it is kind of runny.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, add more white chocolate, Christine, if you have it.
Is it gonna harden though?
Yeah, as it cools, it should get thicker. But if you think it needs more, I would eyeball it and I would add.
Yeah.
So I wish this was thicker because then I can show you. So, all right, let's show what you can do. So what I'm gonna do is once it's thick, I'm gonna grab a piping bag. And again, you can use a Ziploc bag. And I'm gonna get a smaller tip for this. This is like a whole rigmarole, guys. I feel like we're gonna be here for like 3 hours. That's fine.
No, I told Bill we'd only take one.
I know. Well, Miss Caitlin, we're making chocolate macarons. That's why it's taking a while. It's taking a while, girl. I'm gonna grab a tip for my piping bag. Since my piping bag is out of service, my other one. And again, you can use a Ziploc bag. And actually, you know what? Let me show you that method. I feel like a lot of people would have that in their house. You take your handy dandy sandwich bag. You grab some of your filling. I honestly don't think we needed that much liquid. That's my fault. That's my measurement that was off. That, and I probably shouldn't have recommended everyone to do the put it in the microwave. Let's skip that step. feel like that's just JulieAnn tempting fate. That's just JulieAnn tempting fate and saying, screw that. I just feel like my chocolate ganache is too wet still. I have a feeling it's because I broke my ganache. Ah, sad. All right. I'm going to dump some in, though, into this bag so I can show you guys what's happening. So when I say you grab it into the bag, the very corner you can see of my sandwich bag on one corner. So there's these two corners. I'm just going to gather everything into one corner. If you don't have a piping bag, this is a good alternative. You just snip a small little corner piece right here from the top, and you can make your own piping bag. And then what I'm going to show you is, I'm really upset about my broken ganache. I almost feel like I need to start over with my ganache. My chocolate is just a mess. Like, it's just not nice. I mean, it's okay. I'm not going to hate on it so hard, but I feel like it broke. When I say it broke, I mean that like the fat of the cream kind of came off. I also think I forgot I should have added the butter at the end, but that's just me. All right, so I'm going to show you. Woo! I feel like my macarons actually might be dry now. Okay, my macarons are dry. I'm going to take my set. Christine's still waiting on hers. I've got two pieces that I'm doing. So I'm going to take my macarons. I'm going to stick them into the oven. They're going to go for about 15 minutes. Okay, I like putting on the oven light and checking them at about 10, 11, 12 minutes just to see. But we're going to go ahead and place them in the oven until they form a crust. And then what should happen is if we didn't knock out the air in the egg whites, they will have the little feet and rise. So I'm going to double check that my oven is 300. All right. I have a handy dandy oven thermometer because I told you my oven is finicky. That says it's 300, so I'm going to trust that. And I'm going to stick my macarons in. So here we go. C'est la vie. Here we go. Oh. I will say middle rack. And if you're like me, I don't have the cookie sheets at the back. Mine is like the air ones. If you're really afraid of burning the bottoms of your macarons, you can do the double cookie sheet method. If you've got a really nice back one, don't worry about it. All right. I'm going to check on those. All right. Hopefully they will work. And everybody else. All right. Now let's talk about what happens when they don't work, because I've got some examples. So I was chatting with you about what happened with my macarons yesterday. So I went ahead and I forgot an egg white. They were super sticky. I put them in and I was like, something feels off, but that's okay. And I baked them. This is the result of that experiment. See how they spread out? And these little feet that should have been a little bit went past like a little hat. So now they're like a little hat. So when you make macarons, what should happen is that these little feet should puff up underneath and be the same size as the actual macaron shell. And again, I'm going to show this close up. See how it goes a little bit over. And that's what happened because I had less of an egg white, right? Now, is the shell itself still good? Why, yes, they are. See? So they came out really great at the bottom. And I'll go ahead and break one open and I'll actually show you the cheat method that I was talking about. If you don't even want to bother with ganaches, I'm going to go ahead and grab some jam. And I'm not even going to use, well, I guess we could be a little bit nice about it. I'm going to take some jam and I'm going to put some in a piping bag, aka a Ziploc, just to show you. If you have a piping bag at home, that's better. But I'm just going to go ahead and grab some jam. You can spread that out with you can actually spread it out with like a little knife, a little bit. Like these are the kinds of things, like if you don't have these kinds of tools at home, I would not worry about it. But again, if you wanted to be a little bit more exact about it, I just took a Ziploc bag because I just want to show you that method. I'm going to snip off the corner of my Ziploc. I'm going to take one of the macarons. This is my terribly sad macaron. And you're going to squeeze like a coin-sized amount. You don't have to go all the way to the edges. Why? Because this is going to spread as soon as I put another macaron on top. So I'm going to grab another one of my sad little macarons that whose shell did not quite rise. Let me grab one, but is about roughly the same size. That's the saving grace of the same size. And I'm just going to press like so. And what should happen is the filling should go all the way to the edges because you've pressed down. Now you have like a little macaron sandwich. And again, these are my sad little macarons that did not have enough egg whites, and so they went sideways. But what you're seeing is your handy dandy macaron. Now, what do the insides look like, JulieAnn, even if they got messed up? Good question. Let me show you. So I'm going to just break one open. What we're looking for is when you bite into the macaron, I just broke it in half, it should be chewy inside. It's hard on the outside, chewy on the inside. So even though these aren't beautiful, because I messed up, they're still really damn delicious. And I will say, excuse my French, I shouldn't have been swearing on a live. They usually say that if you can wait that long, to sit these in the filling in the refrigerator with the macaron for about 24 hours to let it really exude the flavors. But if you can't wait that long, dive in. Okay, that's what happened. I'm totally just going to eat that shell that I started eating. And I'm really going to start over with my ganache. I'm really upset about the fact that I broke it. Because I was not following directions. This is what happens when Julian doesn't follow directions. That's so bad. Here, I'm going to take one of my sad little macarons again and show you if I just had a palette. Just use a regular knife. You can just take this, take some of your chocolate ganache like I am. You can, if you don't even want to be exact about it and not use a piping bag, which is fair. And like I said, don't go all the way outside to the edges. This is my really sad chocolate ganache that is okay, but I'm not that pleased. That's okay because, again, who's eating it? Me. So I'm not so sad about it. And I'm going to go ahead and grab that. Or like I said, you can do the piping bag method, which in this case, this was the chocolate one. I'll snip off the corner.
So JulieAnn, mine are really rising.
Oh, are they? This is exciting. This is exciting, Christine. We're going to see what happens.
Yeah.
All right, so, and then again, you press, and you just press down, and then the filling should go all the way to the ends, like so. I was really worried about my ganache. I told you it broke, but at the end of the day, it's going to be encased in a little sandwich, so I feel like it's going to do its duty. And I'm not going to be so sad about the fact that I think I definitely broke my poor ganache. I really feel like it was the butter, guys. I feel like I added the butter the wrong time. You're supposed to add the butter at the end. And I added it in the beginning. And I added too much liquid. But it's still spreadable, so I'm going to be okay with that. And then I'm checking out my white chocolate. As it sits, it's gotten a little bit thicker. I feel like it needs more chocolate chips, though. I gotta be honest. Tastes good, though.
I added more jam in mine.
Ooh. Yeah, and like I said, you don't even have to, if you want to be lazy about it, just do jam. Or just eat them without filling. You can do that too. I'm going to look at mine now too. I'm scared. Yeah. Oh my God, they got really high.
Oh, are they?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're scaring me because we'll do a cross comparison. I will show you again the flat ones I made in comparison to what happened with Christina and I. And a lot of people, so macaron making, I gotta tell you, like I said, it's like I feel like it's the Mount Everest of baking because not a lot of ingredients, but it feels like you do one thing wrong and it throws off the entire bake, which is what I feel like has been going on with Christine and I.
I will tell you that normally when I do this, I do whip them until they're stiff peaks. So this time it was a little different. So I'm curious. Plus, I think I also used an extra egg white. So I think.
But when you turned it upside down, Christine, did it not? Was it runny?
You mean today?
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it over my head. I'm sure
Christine,
it's
that's how you know.
but I mean, it looked like yours.
It was lava-like consistency.
Sure. Yes. Lava-like.
So I gotta say, macarons, I felt like when we were younger, were not such a big deal. I felt like that they became a thing. I think the eminent reason why, like, you started noticing them, I feel like at the time when Gossip Girl was out, was that they had them in Gossip Girl because they were on the Upper East Side, and they went and they got them at the Lottery that exists in New York. At the time, it was the only Lottery in the United States out of France. So you started seeing them. But if you've ever traveled abroad, they have been out there in like French bakeries for a really long time. And, you know, people look at them, they're these little small little cookies and they have so much flavor. And technically they're gluten-free because they're made out of almond flour. So anybody that has any gluten allergies, but they're not low calorie, guys. There's still lots of sugar in these babies. So don't feel like you're being good. It's just like flourless chocolate cake. Don't think you're being good, guys. It's still baked goods. But that's where I discovered them. And the great thing about stuff like this is I mentioned when I was in France and I visited, and you saw them in all the the patisseries and, like, you know, all those different places. And Christine was living the life in Paris and even got macarons in McDonald's. McDonald's has macarons.
Did I?
Yes, Christine.
You have a better memory than I do.
Mary, did we see macarons in France at the McDonald's? I feel like we have. If Sherry was here, she would reiterate with me. They sell macarons at the McDonald's in France. I swear to God. At least the last time I was there. I don't know about now. I can't vouch for that. But when I was there, all right, Christine, fine. At Starbucks, at, like, you know, random coffee shop, they must have macarons.
Yes, I'm sure they.
That wasn't my French trip. I was not at McDonald's.
All right, are we ready to take these things out? It's been like 10 minutes.
It's supposed to be 15. I've got another 5 minutes. You put yours in a little earlier than me, I think.
I'm a little worried.
Look at the mess that is my workstation. Like, oh, well, you can't see it.
I love your apron, by the way.
Oh, thank you. My friend Sudeshna gave it to me, Rini, who was on. We made, if anyone remembers, we made lemon vanilla bundt cake together, or lemon vanilla pound cake, I should say. And we also made the Swiss rolls together. So I'm still really sad about my ganache. I gotta be honest. The longer it sits, the more I get mad at it because I can tell that I did the butter. So I know what I did wrong. It was the butter. I shouldn't have put the butter in at the same time. The butter is in after. You melt it in to give it a gloss. Mary's right. We always go to fast food in another country. Exactly, Mary. Because, and even McDonald's is different.
You know, McDonald's. Yeah, they have really cool, what is that? Specials for that country.
Yeah, so like it like might seem like one of those things where you're like, why would I do that? It's the same. It's not. We went to the one in Japan and I feel like they had sushi.
They have like lots like squid burgers and
yeah, like they had
you know,
there was like a burger with like a black bun. So it was like squid ink.
Something like that.
Something like that. And they still fry their apple pies, which is the #1 reason to always go to McDonald's abroad. They still fry their apple pies. And for those of you who were born in around the time that McDonald's, before they started baking their apple pies, they used to deep fry those babies and they were delicious. And I know it's terrible for you, but they're delicious. So there you go. But Christine, how was your time in Paris? Did you learn more French while you were there? Were you okay to get around with limited French? Did you know a lot of French when you were there? Or?
You know, I started learning French, a few months before, Duolingo, and we stayed. Oh, is it time to take
my 3-minute warning, because I set mine 3 minutes behind because I wanted to double check to see if they were burnt.
And I'll be right back.
They're looking okay. However, I did a really bad job at the tops. And I do think that my almond flour was not incorporated as well as I would like because they're not very smooth. That's my fault.
And darling, I'm so sorry. I only have 10 more minutes.
I know. We've been doing this for a little bit long. That's what I'm saying. I already showed everyone how to fill them. And so we're just waiting for them to come out of the oven. So at the end of the day, when you take them out, we're just all going to have to look at the photos after the fact.
Yeah.
Because, Christine, you and I have been baking for almost 2 hours. This is how intense this got. Like, this shouldn't have taken that long, you guys, but that's how intense it got. And again, as I showed you guys before, you can make the filling and then you can use it, again, Ziploc bag, you can use it. If you want to be really technical about it, you can use a piping bag. If you don't even have a piping bag, just use the back of a knife or anything like flat and just put some filling in the middle, because when you press it together, it will spread out.
Oh, JulieAnn, mine's dry, really dry and cracked.
Oh no!
I think too much egg whites.
Oh no! We're gonna see. I was thinking to myself that mine might not have come out. So yesterday, this is what I'm talking about macarons. Yesterday, I made them so that they were not stiff enough. As I showed you guys, they became flat little babies. And today, I feel like the opposite may be true. I feel like my tops are going to be, what's the word I want to use? Not so very blemish looking. But doesn't matter, Christine, because
They'll taste good.
They're going to taste good. This is the hill we climb to Everest, right? You might not make it to the top every time, but you tried. You tried to get to Everest. So, okay, I've got another minute on my timer, and then I'm going to check. I'm going to grab mine out, and then we will go ahead and say "C'est la vie" on our macarons. And I apologize for all those who actually speak French, because Christine and I are speaking French very badly. All right, my timer's about to go off. I'm checking my other set. So as everyone remembered, I had enough to make another set. And this is where I'm saying that mine wasn't as smooth as I liked it to be. I have a feeling that I did not incorporate my almond flour very well to begin with and didn't blitz enough. So they're very stiff though. And again, they can be out on the counter like anywhere from 10 to like almost an hour, as long as they're dry on the outside. Ooh, here goes my timer.
How do they look?
They look like macarons.
Good job.
So this is what I'm saying, that I feel like they didn't crack on top, but I do feel like I didn't smooth out my actual macaron batter well enough when I was mixing and incorporated, because they're a little craggly on top. They don't have that smooth top that you normally get when you whip up your meringue really well, and you incorporate your almond flour very well. I feel like mine, not so much, but let's do the cross comparison. See how the height, how they got their height, and they have like the little feet at the bottom, in comparison to what happened yesterday, where I missed an egg white and they were flat and they spread. So we see here that this is not the case. They actually rose up. So there we are, macarons. Did you taste one already, Christine?
I did. It fell apart.
Oh no.
Mine is a fail. But they taste good.
We're gonna have to do this again, Christine, just so we can get this right, because I feel like we've let so many people down. My ganache broke. This is live baking. This is why. If we were just doing like it was a video and like we edited it together, and at the end of it, it's all perfect. No, guys, live baking and macarons, like I said, are a thing of beauty. So
you can try Italian. Mary says they're easier.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with everybody. I usually prefer the Italian meringue method, the Pierre Hermé method, but most people make macarons through the French meringue method, and I feel like you have to try them both ways. But they're both equally delicious. And again, if they didn't come out the way that you wanted them to, I promise they still taste really good.
Yeah.
So
learn from me. Don't use 4 egg whites. Use just 3.
I'm putting my other batch in the oven though. And then this is where I guess, Christine, we're going to say goodbye.
Okay.
So Mary also has been on, and hello, Stephanie. Mary has also been on for like an hour and 50 minutes. So she's been taking this trip along with us as we attempted to make these macarons. Again, don't forget, just do like a coin-sized drop of filling in the middle. You can use a flat spatula, you can use a knife, palette knife, or you can just do Ziploc bag if you don't have a piping bag, and clip the corners, and that's how you fill them. And then just sandwich and press them together, and you will have your macaron. And it's okay if they are not perfect, they will taste delicious. I feel like that we keep on reiterating that, so people are like, what happened? That's what happened.
Try it anyways. That's right.
If you tried this, please let us know how it went. And as you were listening to Christine and I, the recipe for ganache, start with half the cream in the beginning. Don't do all of it.
Or more chocolate.
And or more chocolate, because it was not the right amount. And I'll make a note of that as well. Thank you, everybody, for spending almost 2 hours of your life with us on a Saturday. I really appreciate it. And thanks for watching Christine and I. We will try maybe again, maybe not making live, but maybe together, and then show everybody that we can actually make macarons.
We'll show the pictures of what it could have looked like.
I almost feel, Christine, yesterday when I messed up and I did one less egg white, I felt like the method was much better. So I do think that today was a fail in lots of different ways. So okay. You know what? Again, if you want them to, like, you know, be darker, you add food coloring, you do all these different things to it, and to make it unblemished, you have to be really good about mixing it, and we were being precious about it, and whatever. At the end of the day, they're good. So thank you. Enjoy your Saturday. Christine, always good to see you. Mary, always glad to have you in the comments making fun of us and fixing us when we say wrong things like I do all the time. And hopefully everyone, if you baked these macarons, hopefully you baked them better than Christine and I. Please take photos. Please tag us, tag Mary. Let us know that somebody actually did something right today. And enjoy your French macaroons. Have a happy Valentine's Day, and also a very happy Lunar New Year to everyone that also celebrates. So that is all. Thank you once again. All right. Bye everybody. Bye, Christine.